The second. Good. So this program, like I said, is organized by Space Help Africa, and we are a unique consultancy within the African space ecosystem. And our main vision and aim is to support the commercialization of the African space sector. We want to see more private investments in space, and how we do this is to support market entry services for international partners and organizations outside the continent that want to expand maybe space business or anything related to space in Africa. And then we do also that within the continents as well.
Mm.
So we provide, hi everybody, please make sure you're on mute. So we provide these services to ensure that we support startups as well and young entrepreneurs within the African space ecosystem. So our main vision, like I said here, is to build a self-sustaining and innovative space ecosystem, particularly supporting the private sector. This series, the Space Hubs Dialogue session, is just part of our broader aims to see how we can create space awareness and support capacity building for young people in space. So it is intended that these sessions are not technical or anything too difficult. We want everybody to enjoy the conversation and to ask questions as well. So on today's session, I'm very happy to be joined with Olayode. Just give me a second. Let me go to the next slide. So today's session, I'm happy to be joined by Olayode and Wanjiku to discuss this topic on Africans in orbit. Does it matter? This is a very interesting topic, and particularly because there's been so much drama on human spaceflight this month with Katy Perry and all the Wanjiku could probably tell us what the climate looks like in America right now, but that was such a controversial space flight because you see something that's supposed to be symbolic and inspiring turning into a very big controversy. So even as Africa, we try to position ourselves in the industry, we have to ask ourselves very genuine questions on why are we doing this? How do we do this as well? So these are our speakers today. I think they would give a very their own background when they start to speak. I do have a summarized profile here that I would love to read myself. So just give me a second. Okay, so for our first speaker, Olayode, he's a seasoned space affairs analyst with over 14 years of experience in the field. He's currently the senior special assistant to the Director General of the Nigerian Space Agency, the National Space Research and Development Agency. Of course, we know that it's not a hidden fact that NASA is one of the most advanced space agencies we have in the continent. So very happy to have you here, Mr. Olayode. And he's been instrumental in shaping the agency's communication strategy. And he holds a postgraduate degree in satellite communications. And he's the founder and coordinator of Society for Space Philosophy. So maybe he can tell us more about that during when he starts to speak. And he has established himself as one of the leading voices in the Nigeria space sector. I would encourage everybody to follow him on social media. I follow him on LinkedIn, and I can tell you, I know every single thing happening in NASA, every single thing. So please follow him on social media so you can be updated. And today we have Wanjiku. Wanjiku, I'm so excited to have you on board. And the reason is because it's really hard getting female speakers for space webinars. So it's very, very difficult. So I'm very happy that you're obliged to speak for these webinars, especially within the African space ecosystem. It's hard to see, willing public speakers in space. So thanks for joining us. Wanjiku is an aerospace engineer and entrepreneur, and she's a scientist astronaut from the scientist astronaut candidate program graduate. Maybe you can tell us more about that project. I'm not very familiar with it. And she's the founder of Visilion, which is an infrastructure development firm working on the development of the world's first equatorial commercial spaceport in Africa. Wow, truly groundbreaking. Maybe you can tell us more about our project as well. So those are our amazing speakers. I am going to stop speaking now and just let Mr. Olayode begin his presentation, and then Wanjiku, and then we can have an interesting Q&A. Thank you so much, Mr. Olayode. Over to you.
Right. Good evening, everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Olayode Abdurasaq, but I know there is no AKA there. I'm AKA Philosopher King. I'm also called Philosopher King. Yeah, all right. So, as the topic goes, Africa in orbit, does it matter? But quite all right. Before we dumble into that topic, we should also understand why does it matter, or why is it that we're asking if it matters? We need to also ask, why is it that we're asking if it matters? So we need to also go like on a journey, the journey of space exploration itself, and Africa in the center. Well, let me start also by congratulating the African Space Agency for achieving this milestone, the milestone of the inauguration of that agency itself. This is what has been going on for a long time, and we really appreciate the fact that we're able to get to that level. And that, again, is a sign to tell us that it matters, that we need to get there. So if you look at space exploration starting from 1957, I think, yeah, from 1957, yeah, that Sputnik exploration itself. When it started, you see that definitely the Europeans, the Americans, the Russians, they have been in the forefront. They have been in the forefront. Even the first man that have gone to that orbit is a Russian. They call him Yuri Gagarin. Yes, Yuri Gagarin. But you will also be surprised that 1957 to 1961, just 4 years, they have put somebody down there. They have put somebody down there. And you know what? The funniest part is that till date, nobody has met that Yuri Gagarin records, because it's the only one that orbits and go to the outer space. Because there's a difference between going to the orbit and going to the outer space. There are two different things, though they are a little bit similar, but they are two different things. So the Europeans, the Americans, the Russians, they have taken the advantage for a very long time. And the funniest part is that these civilizations stayed in Africa. You have heard that civilization started in Egypt. So if that is really true, we started civilization. But why is it that today we are now begging them? Even the inauguration we just did, we have to collaborate with European Space Agency. You understand? This MOU must be signed because we need to keep begging them. But they started from us. They steal the idea from us. They look at us, they took advantage of the knowledge that we had, the special mathematics, astronomy, all those knowledge is our own knowledge in Africa. But when they took the advantage, they organize themselves, they exploit and explore space to solve their own problem. So when we are now looking at, okay, what is happening to Africans? What is really happening to Africans? And that's why we say, okay, in this time and age, thank God Africans are doing their own. Nigeria is equally trying to put someone in space. You can see that even that we are not doing it on our own. Yes, there is a collaboration with Sarah. This collaboration, they call it, Sarah is space, what is that? Space Exploration Research Agency. Yes, Space Exploration Research Agency. That is Sarah. So Sarah has been trying as much as possible, because they are like an NGO or a private organization. They are not government organization. So they, with this, they are, what's they called? They use one thing to, is it this blue origin? Yes, they use Blue Origin. You understand? They use Blue Origin. So we have SpaceX too. Those are organizations which are private organizations that are working towards investing in space technology. So now Nigeria are trying to do that, and I think Nigeria will be the first Africa that will go to space. I'll tell you what matters, or how does it matter. Let me just go straight. Why does it really matters? You see, if you want to solve a problem in a particular environment, the solution is not in that environment. If you want to solve a problem inside you, the solution is not inside you. So if you want to solve the problem of the earth surface, you want to solve the problem is not in the earth. The solution is not here. The solution is in the outer space. So you need to go to the outer space, bring the solution down to the earth and solve the problem. Problem of communication, security, energy, environmental problem. All those problems are problems that the is suffering from. But the only way to survive, the only way to solve it is to go to the outer space. And that is the advantage that the Europeans, the Russians have taken. So when you now go to the outer space, you take data, look at our phone. One good example I always say about this is this. Look at what our phone has done to us. With the space technology, without going to bring signal from outer space, we cannot even communicate. But you can see how far this thing has really done for us. Even the internet we are using is from that place. So this is how it matters. This is why it matters. Now, we are struggling in Africa to do so many things. Now, when you talk about data, when you talk about doing other things, they are so expensive. Even to explore space is expensive in Africa. Why? Because we have not gone into that orbit. So many things we get from there, and those things make it so cumbersome for us to work with what we have. So there is a need for us to get to that orbit, take data, do research, exploit and explore that outer space so that we can come down and solve the problem on the Earth surface. So you can see this, it really matters, really matters. And solving this problem will reduce so many things. The expensive that we're saying, so this is expensive, that is expensive, it will surely get reduced. So for me, because of the fact that we cannot solve the problem or we cannot get the solution to the problem of the Earth on Earth, we need to go to the outer space. That shows that it matters for us to go to the outer space. So I think that I have justified the fact that we really need it. So it is justified and it really matters that we go there to get it. Or do you want me to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. Just thank you for your early thoughts on the topic. Yes, we have more like the questions and all that we are going to come to. For now,
Yeah,
let's
definitely.
see Wanjiku's, general thoughts on the team as
All
well.
right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate the passion within my fellow speakers. A point about Africans in orbit. Thank you, Nelly, for having me today and those in attendance. It's an honor to be with you today under this specific theme, a question that for me resonates not just professionally, but personally at the very core of who I am. To those who are not aware, my name is Wanjiku Kanjumba. I am an aerospace engineer, and a passionate futurist, and the CEO of Visilion, a global infrastructure and aerospace development company. My journey has taken me across continents, working in United States aerospace industry, standing on launch pads where history has been made, but my heart has always been tethered to one truth. Africa belongs in orbit too. At Visilion, as what Nelly mentioned, we are leading the charge to establish the Omega Spaceport, the first ever equatorial commercial spaceport based in Kenya. It's more than just a project. It's a vision to create a gateway from Africa to the universe. But today I'm not here to simply share technical plans. I'm here to reflect on a deeper question. Does it matter if Africans are in orbit? And I say it absolutely matters. But let's take a step back for a moment. Throughout history, who gets to be in orbit, to explore, to claim, to innovate, has been defined by those who hold the future. Being in orbit isn't just about floating in space, it's about power, sovereignty, and vision. It's about those who tell the story of humanity's next chapter. If Africa is not part of that conversation, then we risk repeating the past, where others venture ahead and we are left as spectators rather than co-authors of destiny. Africa's Africans in orbit matters because representation matters, and not just symbolic representation, where one or two astronauts fly as exceptions, but full systemic participation in designing, building, launching, operating the infrastructure of tomorrow. When I founded Visilion, I was deeply inspired by the missed opportunities of the past. For you see, Kenya has already touched orbit. In the 1960s through the 1980s, Kenya hosted the San Marco launch platform in Malindi through partnership with Italy. Rockets were launched from our soil, but it was not about our leadership, not in our control, and not our narrative. But today, we are determined to change that. With the Omega Spaceport, we are not just asking for a seat at someone else's table, we are building the launchpad for ourselves with Kenyan minds, African leadership, and a vision rooted in self-determination. This matters because when young Africans see rockets launching off from our soil, they will see tangible reality that the universe belongs to them too. They realize that African problems can have space-based solutions, from climate monitoring to communication to national security. Africa has the youngest population in the world. Imagine if those millions of young minds were directed to not just solving yesterday's problems, but creating tomorrow's industries: space mining, satellite servicing, planetary defense, deep space exploration. For Africa, this is just the beginning. To those listening today, if you've ever wondered whether it matters if Africans are in orbit, hear me clearly. It matters because we cannot afford not to be. It matters for our dignity as a people. It matters for our security as a continent. It matters for our children's imagination. It matters for the equitable future of humanity. So I ask all of you, support African visionaries, invest in African infrastructure, and believe in the African cosmos. Because when Africa rises to orbit, it's not just Africa that wins, it's the future of all humanity that becomes more complete, more just, and more inspiring. To those who are interested in being involved, I look forward to reaching the stars together. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Wanjiku. And you and Olayode has spoken so passionately, like really, really passionately, just kind of like Martin Luther King vibe this evening. So honestly, this is such like a great opening for the discussion. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to pick up from where you ended, Wanjiku. By the way, everybody, thanks for those who just joined us. We are discussing on if it matters for Africans to actually be in outer space or nerds. And I think Wanjiku has really kicked off with some of the next questions I wanted to ask the panel. So if you have any questions or concerns or you want to make a contribution, please feel free to raise your hands or just send a question to the chat box. We have about 30 minutes to discuss widely on this topic. So I'm really hoping not just to get your questions, but also your contributions and comments as well. If your contribution is very long, please feel free to type it. But if you have a question, yeah, or a short comment, I'll be glad to take that as well. So yes, just to start with the first question, I think the both of you have spoken on why it is necessary for us to be represented. I think that word was used by both Olayode and Wanjiku, represented, because other continents has, gone to space. But then I think I'm just going to, in terms of what we need space for, the way the current African space program has been couched, the way the narrative of the policy, it is primarily linked to socioeconomic development, climate change resilience, all the problems we have, solving. I think Olayode mentioned security. And then the question then becomes like human space flight. Now, this is not about the public. I'm still talking in the industry. We'll go to the public later. In the industry, how do we show the practical benefits of, thinking about human spaceflight missions at this time of like our ecosystem? I don't know, any of you could go first. I think maybe Olayode, you want to go. What are the practical reasons you could say to, African countries, that are working on their policy at the moment? Why is spaceflight not just symbolically, but practically relevant for their maybe space economy or their country? Yeah, Olayode, you can go first, and then Wanjiku, you can take that up.
Well, I think thanks for that question. And I think we have answered that question too in both presentation, but in order to be straight on it, definitely. When she was talking, she talked about representation, which is very, very important, that we have to be represented. And you know, quite all right, the world belongs to all of us. And when there is a share of what belongs to the earth, we are all part of that share. We should share it together. So they shouldn't be sharing the thing that they have from the space, and we part of the earth, and we are saying, no, we don't have it. Or else they will be getting it and they'll be just giving us junks, they'll be giving us junks here. So with that, I think is very, very important. One thing they brought to Africans, one thing they put in our face directly is to tell us that going to space is very, very expensive. You see, that mentality has been in each and every
But
one of us.
Olayode,
It's
don't you
so,
think it is extremely expensive? Like, to have government
it
and
has to do with
everything. Like,
priority. It has to do with priority and what you are going to gain from it. You understand? Today,
that's
what is really going on today is those private organizations investing in space. And they are making that today now, letting everybody see that it is a need, that the time is now. So if they are going into it, Elon Musk today, you know what he's doing with his SpaceX. You understand? So this has shown that it has come to stay. And if a government, if a country is ready to say, want to venture into this and want to spend a lot, in my place, there's an adage they say, Obe to do, meaning that if a soup is sweet, the ingredients definitely they are cost. So if you want it to be sweet, you have to organize those ingredients and enjoy it. So I don't think we should be looking at all those paralysis of say, oh, it's sports, oh, it's this. We know quite well that it has come to stay. And you cannot be on the surface of the earth without using the space. In NASDAQ, we have a motto. We call it space is ubiquitous, meaning that there is no area of life that you don't need the space. There is no area of life. Just mention one. Then we'll tell you how space technology, can be used to explore those things. So that tells you that it is very, very paramount. And this is the time, no matter how expensive it is, we have to venture into it.
yeah.
And the time is now. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Ola. Thank you so much. Wanjiku, do you want to take up on that? Just to recap, I was talking about like you just said, if you want to convince like governments that are focusing on using space data for more, pressing challenges, how do you maybe show the importance of human spaceflight missions?
Right. And you mentioned like looking at it in a practical sense, but I would also try to include maybe looking at it in symbolically and strategically as
Yeah,
well.
that's fine.
Yes. Yeah, sure. So I would say human spaceflight isn't just about sending bodies into orbit. It's about claiming agency in the next era of human progress. For Africa, participation is critical in what, like I mentioned, about I believe in 3 areas. So first one I will delve into is symbolically. When an African astronaut looks down at Earth from space, it reshapes narratives. It tells our youth, we belong here. It counters that myth that Africa is only a consumer of technology, not a creator. African participation in human spaceflight symbolizes inclusion and diversity, showcasing that the cosmos belongs to all humanity. And going back to the representation part that I mentioned, is representation in orbit reshapes how the world and Africans ourselves see our potential. The second reason I would look at it is strategically. So space is geopolitical. Nations with human spaceflight capabilities influence orbital traffic, space law, and even security. If Africa isn't at the table, decisions about satellite slots, debris management, and lunar resources will be made without us. Seat on the International Space Station or its successor isn't just prestige, it's a voice in humanity's future. And then going back to your point about the practical reasons, I would say the spin-offs are immense. Training African astronauts requires advanced STEM ecosystems, from medical research to AI, skills that translate into other terrestrial industries that we currently have. For example, like the whole Kenya Spaceport Initiative isn't just about launches. It's about creating high-tech jobs, attracting investment, solving local challenges like climate monitoring with space-derived data. So bottom line, I would say that human space flight is in itself infrastructure. Just as we wouldn't outsource our roads or ports, why shouldn't we shouldn't outsource our cosmic destiny, is the way I look at it. Yeah.
Cosmic destiny, that's a strong line. Thanks for
Thanks.
yeah, thanks for just pointing that out and your points. So on the second part of the conversation, before I go to the second part of this is from an industry perspective, what we've been trying to say. So now we also have to deal with public perception and other parts of this discussion. So I'll just look at some comments on the group chat, and then we'll go to the second part of the discussion. So Giovan said Kenya has been in the space race since the 1960s. We need to build on that. Absolutely. Thanks for that comment. And Dilion is saying that from his or her, I'm not quite sure, experience in South Africa, the significance of Africa in space is well known by the industry, but not to the average person. Oh yeah, great. So this is the second part of the conversation I want us to look at. So who thinks space is out of reach, that Africa should focus on the basics of education, healthcare, food, etc. before venturing into space? So how do you convince the general public to support Africa's space ambitions? Thank you, Dilion. I'm just going to tie that to the second part of the discussion in a minute. And Helen saying it is not expensive. And okay, I think this was when Olayode said, we've been given a narrative that it's very expensive. And she was saying it's not expensive. You have to look at the arrow. And the ROI, I think, return on investment from the government, create innovative know-how, job and advancement. Yeah, to even create the infrastructure is the problem. You need a lot of money to create the infrastructure to get the ROI in the first place. So it's this loop of you need the money to make the money in space. So we need that initial capital, which is great, which is what the next comment is about. So we have from Joanne here. Thank you so much. She says space is high risk. Very true. Capital intensive sector. The technology is dual use. Of course, so for those that may not understand dual use, it means that space has civilian use purposes, like, maybe using satellite data for telecommunications, to watch your football, order your Uber. But, the same application to order your Uber can be used for precision bombing as well. So you see how space technology can actually have military purposes as well. So that makes it a very tricky sector in terms of the politics. So Joanne also said it's not as simple as Mr. Olayode is putting it. So maybe he would reiterate on what he meant. It is a geopolitical and diplomatic tool, absolutely. And on the global space governance framework and the primacy of states in that framework, Africa in orbit will need a strategic, coherent approach that is meaningful to the continent. I entirely agree. So we'll come back to the rest of the comments being made, but for now, let's just go to the second issue, which is on public perception. So I had to craft a question so that I don't mince my words. So the question I have here is, given the recent backlash to space tourism, because I don't know, I could call it space tourism. I think someone can call it something else. By Katy Perry's and all that, what risks or criticisms might arise if African nations pursue human space flights? So this question is for both our speakers and anyone in the audience that want to address it. How can we build narratives that preempt such concerns? I know, it's part of our cosmic destiny that Wanjiku just gave us a very wonderful phrase to use. But honestly, like, even as someone in the space industry, there are some things in space that I don't agree with. People thinking about Mars and things like that. They feel like, oh yes, we have to be. I don't think so. So even within the space sector, we have different opinions on human space flight. So, to have an astronaut program is incredibly expensive. How do we how do we handle, perception? Nigeria wants to go to space. Maybe Olayode can start and then Wanjiku come up. Nigeria wants to go to space today. Hopefully the Sarah Blue Origin mission takes place. But then we know everything that's going on in Nigeria at the moment. I think there'll be a lot of public backlash, whether or not we want to agree. And how would NASA, position itself as this? Let's start with Olayode and then Wanjiku will hear your thoughts. Thank you, Olayode.
Oh, all right. Thank you for that. Even before the talk of going to space, the exploration of space itself is there are a lot of backlash that come on. Africa don't need to start exploring space at all for anything. Talk less of saying we want to now send someone, to the orbit. We have been, on social media, on the internet, on newspaper, people are saying we don't need this, we don't need this. In fact, the question that comes up is, why do you need to run when you don't know how to crawl? You see, so those are those things that are coming in. But you see, one thing we fail to do is to use the media. Yes, we have failed to use the media. And when I say using the media themselves need to, first of all, understand what is the gain therein. What are the benefits therein? What are those things that we need to bring back when we go to that place? So when we educate the media, then the media now knows how to educate the public. You understand? And as we are going in Nigeria, in NASDAQ, the first thing, because it's capital intensive, that's what they put in our head already. Then we need to start collaborating. We cannot do it alone. This one that Sarah is doing, they did it in Brazil, 2022. They did it in Brazil, and they went. You understand? And this time around, they okay want to do it. They're now looking for a Nigerian that will go as well with us. So I think if this one is successful, you get it now. After this, there are so many things that will come up, and people will start seeing the need for going to the orbit. But I think, as we always say, it is not about going down there, but what are we bringing down? Let me just put it now. When you go up there, what do you bring down? You get it now?
Yeah, I think
So
probably Wanjiku will be in a better position to give to talk
to
about
tell us what we bring down.
like depending on the kind of mission you might actually not bring back. Like if it's some
Bring
orbital
something down.
flight, you pretty much just
So
take
the
food,
last one
flour.
you mentioned, the last one you mentioned, she brought down a flower. It's
Yeah.
all the flower she brought down.
Yeah, like I would be, I don't know, as a normal
You
African,
want to
quite
say for spending
skeptical.
such amount of money, this is what you're going to bring down?
Yeah, anyway, so yeah, it depends on the mission and everything. So thank you so much, Ola. Let's hear from Wanji. How
So,
Wanji?
but basically, I'm trying to just say
Yeah,
is we start with awareness, then we
yeah,
equally go with collaborations. When we collaborate and we do lot of those things, we start seeing the need and the benefits therein. And I think everyone will start keying into it.
yeah.
Thank you.
I completely agree with you in terms of like sensitizing the media as well, because I remember when the announcement was first made, for the astronaut program collaboration with Sarah and Blue Origin and Nigeria, there were some openly misleading public, state. They just said something about federal government sponsoring astronaut, whatever. I think by Punch or one of these media houses. So how the agency is going to like strategically make sure that we don't have things like that, because people started thinking it was the federal government that was going to spend this money, and people were calling me out, Nelly, see what your people are doing. So how the Nigeria Space Agency is able to, create that awareness with the media, I think that's a very strong point you made there. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Wanjiku.
So maybe let me just put it here. It's going to be fully sponsored by Sarah. Fully sponsored by
Yes, for all
Sarah.
the Nigerians in the house, the money is not coming from
Yeah,
the Nigerian
it's not
federal
coming.
government
Yeah,
budget.
definitely.
It's
So
not coming.
NASA is just
It's a
managing
free
it with
seat.
them and things like that. So it's fully funded by Sarah.
It's a free
Yeah,
seat.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ola.
All right, you're welcome.
Wanjiku.
Yeah,
Yes, in the US
sure.
and everything. How would you approach the issue?
I was gonna say, I think it's very funny that you brought up the whole Katy Perry
Of
fiasco.
course, of course. What everybody's been talking about this month. So like, I feel
No,
it all around me, you know.
you say that. I was trying to avoid it very much. Every time I kept
Nah,
on seeing it
no,
on my,
it's pretty
I
profound.
kept on seeing it on my LinkedIn feed.
It's
People were asking me
controversial.
questions. I
Yeah, people
know
have,
there were so many
yeah, it's
people who
fine.
are asking me about that. So it's very funny when the
Yeah.
fact that you're mentioning Katy
Yeah,
Perry, that
you
made
want
me
to
smile.
avoid the whole kit because I know it's a controversial discourse on whether or not you support the of but this is not you okay, you know what? The question, tease it out to Africa. How do we avoid
Yes, yes, yes,
like
yes,
this?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
but I don't
yes,
need
yes, yes,
your
yes.
personal take on Katy Perry and going to space.
Oh no, no, no! I was not going to give my thoughts about that.
It's fine.
Especially when it's been recorded. There was no way.
It's fine.
Anyway, but I'll keep the topic on sorry, on Africa. I'll keep the topic on
Yeah,
Africa.
keep
Don't
it on
worry.
Africa.
So,
Absolutely.
but I will say that whatever the backlash against billionaires joyriding to space, I will say it's valid, but it's not the same as Africa's like sovereign space ambitions. So the way I can think about it is splitting it into two ways. So looking at the risks and the criticisms that people usually have, and then looking at the narrative like solutions based on the question that you posed. So for the risk and criticisms, I know a typical question that most people usually have is why space when we have poverty? You know, that's a typical thing that we have, a question that most people have when it comes within Africa. But I feel like that is a false binary because no one asks France, the United States, or India why they invest in space amid all the inequalities and issues that they have.
Hmm.
Space programs, I look at it, create jobs, they spur innovation, and often fund themselves through satellite services. Maybe my fellow speaker can, correct me on this, but I feel that Nigeria's like Sat1 has paid for itself in the agriculture and security applications from what I've heard. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that, but that's one example of, funding itself through satellite services. And if African spaceflight is framed as a vanity project for, politicians or the wealthy, then rightfully, yeah, it would face resistance. But the goal must be, inclusive benefit, training astronauts from public universities, not just private elites. Maybe that can be a different approach, contrary to what the West has been doing. And then also partnering with foreign agencies. There's that risk. There's definitely that risk of repeating resource extraction patterns that we've had in the past. So I believe we must ensure technology transfer, not dependency. Now,
Hmm.
in regards to going to what you posed about like the narrative solutions, the way I could look at it is highlight how astronaut missions, rely on local talent, engineers, doctors, coders, and how their skills uplift, other sectors outside of the aerospace industry. And as a continent, I really think that, especially now with the African Space Agency, I think we need to constantly celebrate Africans' fasts in the space industry. Give that whole importance of sharing our fasts, our accomplishments with each other as a continent as we are making strides in the industry. And in terms of being, in astronaut selection, I think that should also be something like a public contest, maybe. By opening up to the public, we could have, a similar thing that the European Space Agency has, where, like an astronaut corps. So the African Space Agency can be opening it up to the African continent. It just doesn't have to be in Nigeria. It just doesn't have to be a Kenyan astronaut. We can just unify it and be like, okay, public contest that opens up for people to have the opportunity to go to space. That would be pretty awesome. Coordinated by the African Space Agency, having STEM scholarships tied to space programs, maybe doing like documentaries showcasing African contributions to space as a shared ambition, not just an elite pursuit that we have been seeing with the West. But I think the main key thing I would say to end all of that is that we're not building tickets to space. We are building the launch pad, is the way I'd look at it.
Yeah, interesting. Like just working on the infrastructure itself and not just, taking, a ticket for a suborbital flight or something like that, which is actually very sustainable and brings me to my last question. Because when we look at space flight, human space flight, we are also looking at experiments. I remember, like, or maybe on board is the space station a few years ago. We were many years ago actually at the African Space Leadership Conference, and one of the speakers of the conference then, he was saying how the kind of projects that are being done by the ISS or on the ISS depends on the needs of those countries that are participating, or the country that sends its astronaut to do a project that would benefit their own people. And if we are not on the, for example, let's say yam, or maybe one special thing we have in West Africa, for example, we have a big problem with sickle cell. It's a very West African kind of problem because we have one of the highest rates in the world. And we know they do a lot of like cancer related research and bone related research on the ISS. I am no space doctor or microbiologist or anything, but I know that they can do such experiments on the ISS. And it's also about, if we don't have this infrastructure and we don't have our people doing this sort of experiments and research that benefits us, then we would never have space-based solutions that we don't create. So, which goes back to that last statement. I really loved what you said about, building the infrastructure. And I have just one last question here. Yes, again, if you have any question or you want to make a contribution, please do let me know. Feel free to raise your hands or make a comment on the group chat. So my last question, I'll just start with Ola, and then Wanjiku, you can round up. I think you've said a bit about it, but maybe you could maybe make more emphasis. It's on the practical steps that can be taken to prepare the continent. What tangible actions are needed to support a futuristic African astronauts program in the future? How do we start this whole, getting Africans in orbit? Where do we start from? Thank you so much, Ola.
Yeah, actually, we have started with the inauguration of African Space Agency. We have started, of course, we have started. And I know quite right in that inauguration you were there. I couldn't make comment. Yeah, I know quite right in that inauguration. Definitely, we call up on investors. We call up on investors. We have African wealthy men here and there. You get it now. We have people. Our own is just say, okay, tell this idea to them. This one that you are investing. We have one African man in Nigeria wanted to invest in Arsenal football, club one time. So if just go around there, I think most times the scientists and engineers are doing. They don't have this marketing mindset. You get it now? They don't have this marketing
Yeah, we
mindset.
need someone to call what's his name? Dangote and Tolu Elumelu.
Yeah, of course.
How
We
do
need to
we
talk to
convince
them.
them? They are businessmen. So yes, how do we
They are
also convince
businessmen.
them on
Now the
getting
scientists and
paid?
engineers always talk in their terms. So they needed like that leadership, space leadership. These are people that can organize such talk, where investors interested in say, if you invest in the next so year, this is what you will get. You understand? This is how to prepare. Definitely, government alone can't do it. So because government cannot do it, I talked about the what do you call it now? The SpaceX. SpaceX is not government. Blue Origin is not government. The Galactics, they're not government. So I think the way we just need to start is to start embracing the government-private partnership. So this partnership will get us ready. There are people that have money and they don't even know where they want to spend that money. They don't know how. But if we introduce this to them, and I think with the African Space Agency, that is the only way to go by. And awareness. You see, when you
Yeah.
start telling people, about it often and often, here and there, this one that you are doing is so powerful. I know some people are joining, they never knew anything about space. They don't even know whether they are sending people to space. I know people like doing from my side. I've been seeing them here now. So little by little, they start knowing it. Say, for instance, this program now is taken to Channels TV. You understand? And it is being broadcasted in Channels TV. You see how far it will be going. So I think this is the way to go. So, like you just say you are recording. What do we do with the recording? What do we do with it? You know, now it tells that this thing must go far. People must hear, government must see it, private organization must see it and say, what can we do? And
Yeah.
I think at time you will come to how do we talk to those investors?
Yeah.
And I think it's a topic where we can say, how do we talk to those investors? How do we gather them in a hall and discuss space? You
Yeah,
understand?
absolutely.
In NASDAQ,
I
we have what
do.
we call Space Enterprise Department. My DG was you know, he established that department, Space Enterprise. And what that Space Enterprise is all about is just to look at entrepreneur, bring entrepreneur into this and make them, see space as place where they can invest in and get their return from their investment. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ola. I think I completely agree with regards to space communication being a very good place to start as well. We've actually hosted a webinar, I think July last year, with someone from the Kenya Space Agency, Joseph Ocheng, and maybe I'll try to repost the link to that discussion. We talked about down to earth, bringing space to society, and we said one of the biggest problems we really need to convince like investors and people outside the space bubble, because a lot of time in the industry we just talk to we just talk to ourselves and it's not good. And there are people out there and businesses and individuals that their talents and resources can really improve the sector in the continent. So hopefully maybe we should revisit that topic and and even when we did the topic, it was supposed to be for non-space people. We had space people on the call. So that's the challenge sometimes, that not everybody would be interested in space, and it's such a niche area. So communication is quite difficult, like most science communication is. But thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. And Wanjiku, do you want to just take that up? Practical steps that can be taken by the government. Where do we start?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that Africa doesn't need to start from zero. Like my fellow speaker mentioned, that we're already building. So I would look at it in terms of a possible roadmap. I would break it down this way. So firstly, looking at it in terms of the educational way, maybe looking at it as revamping the STEM curriculum to emphasize hands-on space tech. So introducing space-related topics into primary and secondary school curriculum to spark interest early for young people. Programs like robotics clubs, coding workshops, astronomy clubs can encourage students. I'm very much aware there are initiatives that are already doing that, and I high props to them. Especially I know a few people who are on this call who do that. So thank you very much for your service. Now looking at it in terms of policy and investment, creating robust legal frameworks governing space activities, including liability, intellectual property rights, and environmental protections, because that's something that is quite important when it comes within Africa. And to align these frameworks with also international treaties to ensure compliance. And anyway, you guys have been speaking about SpaceX. I'll finally give my thoughts. So think about it that, the next SpaceX could come from Lagos, or it could come from, Nairobi. Governments should, offer like tax incentives for space tech ventures so that, they can be able to become successful. I know my fellow speaker mentioned that, SpaceX, Blue Origin, all those type of companies, privately run, but, they obviously, like he mentioned, there was a lot of emphasis on public and private partnership. A lot of those companies would not really exist without the United States government. They got a lot of help from them. And that's generally the best way for space tech ventures to be able to have a lot of support from the various governments that they can ensure their success, and that would be great for the African continent. And then bringing back to the African Space Agency, like I mentioned, maybe able to pool resources. Like I mentioned, no single nation needs to have its own like astronaut corp, but a shared program like the European Space Agency has is feasible. So encouraging collaboration among African nations to pool resources and share knowledge. Another one I would mention is strategic partnerships. So instead of relying on traditional Western powers that come with strings attached, because we have that we have that precedent before, maybe doing like a South to South collaboration, maybe partnering with India for low cost launch expertise. Brazil for like satellite technology, and the UAE when it comes to their mission for Mars. It would be rather great if you're able to collaborate with the global South in that capacity, instead of relying on Western powers. Looking in regards to Vasilian itself with the whole spaceport model, we want to do public-private partnerships to accelerate infrastructure. I look at it that airlines didn't wait for governments to build airports, so why should space? I look at it that way. Building research hubs equipped with advanced laboratories and simulation tools to conduct experiments and train future astronauts, and then negotiate some agreements with international partners to ensure that Africa gains access to cutting edge technologies and retains intellectual property rights. And then lastly, I would bring into the public engagement. A personal robot for that one is using media platforms to create compelling stories about Africa's journey to space, highlight individuals' contributions to the mission, from engineers to educators, involve local communities in decision-making processes, share the benefits of space exploration, such as improved connectivity to disaster relief systems, celebrate Africa's contribution to astronomy throughout history, linking modern achievements to, ancestral legacies. Our ancestors did do astronomy, but, you don't really get that taught, but it would be great that we have that sense of celebration of what as Africans in the past have been able to achieve. And then, challenges to solve like local problems, pest control or drought prediction, using satellite data, it can be of much value for us. But in general, that's the way I would break
Yeah,
it down.
no,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but the last point I would give is that Africa's space future isn't just about if, it's about how fast, is the way I'd look at it. The pieces are there, the talent, the need, the will. Now we need to hold bold action to stitch them together. By taking these steps, I think that African nations can lay the groundwork for successful human spaceflight programs that inspire, innovate, and uplift societies across the continent.
Yeah, wow. Well said. Well said, just taking it from the ground up, from uh bottom top approach, like they say, from space education all the way through PPP and also working together. Like I think Joanne mentioned, it's a space is capital intensive. It's a very expensive sector, and astronauts programs are even more expensive. So we talk a lot about regional integration in space, but then we have a lot of like very nice little national space programs here and there. For something like an astronaut program, I think it would be like one of the prime examples where if we want to see it happen and happen soon, we really need to work together as a continent. So thank you for sharing your points, all your points on that topic. Very elaborate. Anyone that watched this video would like just get like all the points on that. So and thank you so much. And I'm just going to see, okay, we have a few comments on the group chat. We have a few minutes left to round up, the discussion. But I'll just take a few comments and see if we have any questions. Or yeah, I think Alan said the most important reason for us to go to space is what is our contribution to the human species. Of course, like Wanjiku said something about cosmic destiny. For decades, we have been a continent of yes, the wrong narratives of war, conflict, hunger, and all form of degrading statistics. In this space age, we must be equal partakers of that frontier. We need and must be part of the space frontier now with caps. Thank you, Alan, for being so passionate about sharing that contribution. So usually in our dialogues, we usually like call out like experts to give their contribution to a topic. I don't know if I know that John is a part of the board of directors for the Kenya Space Agency, and a lot has been said about Kenya and the spaceport. Who knows? Kenya might just be Kenya might just be our hope to have a human space flight soon. Something continental. I don't know if Joanne would want to say a word or two on the theme of the topic. I would really appreciate that, and I'm so sorry for putting you on the spotlight, but that would be so good.
This is what happens when you bring a fellow Kenyan into the topic.
Yeah, so let's see who else we have here. Thanks, Fred, for the wonderful comments, and thank you, Helen, for your comments as well on Egyptian history. Not sure. Yeah. Okay, no, Fred is fine. You can be devil's advocates. Feel free to put your thoughts on the group chat as well. So we don't have any pending questions. Haven't heard from Joanne. It's okay. Hopefully we have Joanne on one of our sessions soon. Some other time, I will be happy to hear her comments on that. Fred, we cannot talk about everything in one webinar. Maybe some other time we can talk about sustainability. It's a whole different topic on its own, but thanks for pointing that out. And let me see who else. We have Charles on the call as well. Charles and Zusi. Hi, Charles. Except I'm going to just share.
Yeah, I was just saying hi.
Yeah, I wondered if you could share maybe one or two thoughts on the topic just as we round up, please.
Yeah, so I mean, lovely presentation. I was really inspired. So thank you so much for all the insight and got me thinking. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. So I'm just going to share my screen again on a few things. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining today's session. So next month we are going to gather around again, this time around to commemorate Africa Day. It's on the 25th of April, and we would talk about Pan-Africanism, which is exactly what Africa Day is about Africans working together. But then considering the unique nature of the space industry, how we have different national programs, we have different regional, programs. We have, like the RASCOMSAT, for example, the African Space Agency, and some other programs that are around meteorology, remote sensing, but just different regional bodies. How then do we see Pan-Africanism, which is very much a political and cultural idea? How do we refine this when we are talking about how Africa goes to space? So it's going to be a thought leadership session, hoping to get some industry leaders and academics, basically, because we're going to really look at it from an academic approach as well. On is Pan-Africanism relevant for Africa's, in space? We discussed this last year during Africa Day around to commemorate the Africa Day, and we're doing it this year again. So hopefully, if you love politics or Pan-Africanism as an idea, or you love theory and things like that, it's going to be a very interesting session. So I'm hoping to see everybody there. And thank you. And for today's session, I'm just going to post a link if you have any feedback for us, or you want to follow up on this webinar series. If you have suggestions on topic, you want to tell us how we did, would really love to hear from you as well. So just give me a second. I'll post the link now. Yes, and like I said, we'll be posting all of this on our on our YouTube channel as well. So we'll be glad to see you maybe if you want to go back on this session. So I just sent it, the YouTube link, our WhatsApp group, and a survey form to get your feedback on today's discussion. So I think it's been interesting so far. And I don't know if there are any last words from our speakers right before we close up for today. And Ola, you can go first, and then Wanjiku, you give us your final comments. Thank you.
All right, I will just say it's a very interesting discussion, and I want to equally appreciate you for this wonderful effort. Definitely, you have been doing this, and the sustainability is for you to continue. So I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Ola.
All
Thank you. Wanjiku, you want
right.
to close off with us?
Yes, yes, yes. No, thank you so much, Nelly, for this opportunity. It's definitely, like I mentioned, it's a topic that's dear to my heart, and I am looking forward that Africa can really cement itself in the global space sector. I would love to be going to various events or seeing my LinkedIn feed just filled with just Africans in space and doing amazing things. Watching the news and seeing YouTube videos of Africa just being celebrated across the globe of what the amazing things that we're able to do, and wearing all various type of African flags proudly among the stars. That would be so amazing to see. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely, me as well. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks again, everybody, for coming for today's session. I have posted the link, all our social media, and to get your feedback on what you thought about today's session as well. And hopefully, I see everybody on May 31st to talk about Pan-Africanism. So until then, have a lovely week and, month as well. Bye-bye. Oh yes, the
Like,
picture. We didn't take a group picture.
oh, a picture.
Oh yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, we need a picture. We need a picture. Okay, so who's going to take a picture? This is it. Who's going to? Usually it's Tando that takes the picture, but it's not in today's
You
session.
take it.
I don't know how to do it from my laptop, but I could try. Manjiku, do you know how to take the screen grab? I think.
Yeah, I can. I think
Okay,
I'll take
great.
it.
Yeah, great,
Yeah,
great. And
yeah, yeah.
everybody, please feel free to put on your video if it's convenient for you, if you're in a comfortable place. The pictures for everybody.
You know what? Mhm.
Okay, great. Yeah, I see more faces. Hi, everyone. Oh, nice to put faces to the name.
Okay, this Ellen.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, Wanjiku, ready when you are.
Okay. Okay. It just seems there are a lot more people who are putting on their cameras, so I will give it like 5 seconds. So everyone put on your best faces, smile. I don't know what you're planning on doing, but be ready. Okay.
Okay.
So in 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Sweet.
nice. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm, so that-
Have a lovely